Guys, welcome back to HPL. Muzzy took a quick game one over ErA in that series, played fantastically, mixed it up at the right times to find himself in a position to deal lethal to ErA, who maybe didn't suspect it because of the way that he had switched gears.
Yeah, we saw ErA take a little bit of a risk there, not play around the Savage Roar, Force of Nature combo at the last turn. You know what? Muzzy had it, got himself in that win column. So you know what? He's 2 wins away from getting his first win here, his first match win here on HPL.
Yeah, really important stuff there, too. They'd be mixing it up and talking about, when players should take risks and when they shouldn't. And I have to feel that with the way that ErA's hand constructed, that was the perfect turn to take it and hopefully move forward from there. But game 2 is getting underway, guys. ErA versus Muzzy.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not always like incorrect to take a risk there. In fact, a lot of times it is, because sometimes, the only way you can win the game from that point is to play this way. And so I like seeing that play from ErA there.
Not even necessarily the only way, just sometimes it's your best chance to win. So Muzzy, we got a little bit of a spectator bug here. We'll get his perspective up as soon as we can. But ErA, swap it over to a different control deck here. Interesting that he went over to Warrior immediately after Muzzy had just played Druid. Something I found with people who win with a Druid deck is that they'll just continue to play Druid over and over again. Like you come off such a great high in that scenario where you're like, man, I just destroyed this guy with Force Nature Savage Roar. I want to have Force Nature Savage Roar every time.
Yeah, it feels like the game is very, very easy when you just get a couple points in early and you get to combo them out with Force Nature Savage Roar. And it looks like Muzzy was going to be playing some form of a Warlock strategy here. We're going to have to work on the client here. There's something wrong and bugging out. I know there's been some problems on Twitch today. I know it's not just us.
Yeah, we'll see exactly what's going on with these clients when we get up. Looks to me like, that's a Faceless Manipulator in ErA's hand. I have not seen that card in Control Warrior in a very long time.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen Faceless Manipulator in a Control Warrior deck myself.
It used to be played a lot, sort of, when only you had the first set out, so you were kind of limited in your options. One of the best ways to get the redundancy of those late game minions was just to have Faceless Manipulator. It was so good in scenarios where you could do things like Faceless Manipulator or Ragnaros and then Big Game Hunter their Ragnaros. That was a major swing turn that was available to you. So to see it, it's kind of, a little bit of a blast from the past here. I kind of like seeing it in his deck. I'm curious exactly what his game plan is with it, though. I mean, it might be the fact that he's got this sort of read on Muzzy that he's going to be playing these bigger control decks, and he intends to do something like Faceless Manipulator and follow it up with maybe Execute or Big Game Hunter or even Shield Slam if he's got enough armor for it.
Yeah, Muzzy's got a pretty clean turn here if he wants to take it. He's got a Dark Bomb, the Acolyte of Pain from ErA. We've talked about this before in the show. Anytime you can deny your opponent extra draws off their Acolyte of Pain, it's a pretty big deal. But it looks like we're going to see him Implosion here and take the risk.
Yeah, it looks like he's rolled a 3 here as well. That zombie shell looked like it was pointed at face. So 3 tokens going to be got for him. This Azure Drake in hand, by the way, this is, this is sort of a peculiar card. We've seen it in a lot of Dragon Warlock decks over the past week. But he's also got a Bane of Doom in his hand, too. So I'm not exactly sure what this is going for. The Bane of Doom may just be in here just for the sake of value, but there's a possibility that Azure Drake is just in here for the sake of value. So going to have to wait to see exactly how his hand develops and what his strategy is moving forward. Right now, it looks like he's focused on the long game, just getting the right kinds of value and then making sure that he has adequate threats.
Yeah, speaking of value, you get to Dark Bomb and Life Tap here in that turn, killing ErA's Acolyte of Pain. ErA does have a Brawl in his hand, so if this board gets a little more out of control over the next turn or two, he'll be able to sweep up a lot of it here, but you're going to see him use a Fiery War Axe to kill off this Zombie Chow and regain 5 of that life that's taken from him.
Yeah, excellent leverage of the life total here. Not a risk whatsoever at this point in the game. Not a ton of pressure on him. Armor Smith is going to start challenging every single one of these minions that's on board, but Muzzy has a slew of options available to him. I mean, this could potentially even be a Bane of Doom turn if he wanted it to. He could run 2 tokens in here, find out what demon he's going to get. The average demon size that you get off of a Bane of Doom is very large. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 4 power and about 6 health.
And there's a Blackwing Corruptor. There is the Dragon Warlock deck we have been talking about. This thing has been gaining a lot of popularity lately.
Yeah, it has some really interesting turns available in the late game. I mean, stuff like Blackwing Corruptor gives you a very different approach than you've seen typical Warlock decks do, which, they want to either, put a lot of pressure on these mid-range size cards, things like Mountain Giant, things like Twilight Drake, or the very early pressure that you've seen with stuff like Flame Imp. This is a very different direction that you see from a Warlock deck.
And speaking of a lot of pressure, it looks like ErA is looking to apply a lot of it here. It looks like he's trying to play, or he's thinking about playing an Emperor Thorsign here, and he's going to pick off one of these imps and gain a little armor at the same time.
Yeah, I can't blame him for playing the Emperor here. His hand is, very high on the mana curve at this point. This Emperor has to be dealt with in one way or another. It's almost zero way that the way this game has been panning out that Muzzy can just let this sit around. And so this, kind of disrupts his mana curve. He's got his own Emperor Thoris on that. I think that he would love to play. But, do you want to sacrifice an Azure Drake to get something like that done? He's got plenty of ways to deal with it. It's not a major threat. It's going to affect the way that he has to play his turn. Usually, you want to be doing whatever you can do to put your opponent in bad shape, not have to answer what they're doing. But something that we see very commonly at these levels is players playing cards that force their opponents to take action.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely going to have to take action against his Emperor Thoris on. It's going to be interesting to see how he does it here. Now, it's also interesting to see that Muzzy played the Azure Drake last turn. He drew the Blackwing Corruptor off the Azure Drake draw, but it doesn't give him. Oh, wow.
That is one of the biggest ones you can get off Bane of Doom. Mal'Ganis is almost completely unchecked here from ErA. He's got ways to kill this, but the last thing you want to be doing is killing your opponent's minions and then not following up on them. But, this Faceless Manipulator, this is exactly the kinds of things it can do. This Fire War Axe deals him 0 damage at this point, so it maintains all his armor, maintains a solid health total, gets that Execute out of here. This position now looks like it could be trouble for Muzzy because, he's got ways to answer the Mal'Ganis, but he has to actually answer the Mal'Ganis. And Cairn is even in this. This looks like a Warrior deck from like 2013.
Yeah, it looks like ErA is bringing out an oldie but a goodie here. This looks like the very first Warrior deck I ever played with myself, but yeah, Muzzy's going to have a big game hunter here as a pretty clean answer to this Mal'Ganis. Now, as you said, that was a pretty great turn from ErA, and now he's going to probably get a lot of value off this Brawl over the next turn or two. Yeah,
Twilight Drake, the perfect draw there from Muzzy as well. When he played the big game hunter, he doesn't really get to add any pressure outside of that, but the fact that he picks up this Twilight Drake, now there's suddenly a significant amount of damage that's potentially coming from ErA. ErA going to be the play here. He feels very comfortable at this point playing this and let his opponent deal with it, but Muzzy's even got a way to deal with this one now. He's got Siphon Soul in his hand.
Yeah, Siphon Soul is going to be a very clean answer to ErA here. There aren't many clean answers in Hearthstone to a 4-12, but this is one. And we're going to see him draw a card here early, and then we're going to see him Siphon Soul here. Everything going Muzzy's way in these last couple turns.
So many threats in his hand. Even with something like Brawl in here, it looks like he's going to be able to recover from this so beautifully. And this is one of the powers that you see from a deck like this, is that they'll continue to life tap over the course of the game. And if you don't put a ton of pressure on them, they have the freedom to just continue to scale into that late game as they have these mid-sized threats that end up being a very big deal, and they can continue to life tap afterwards. I can guarantee you that's not the minion that ErA wanted to win the Brawl. He's starting to stabilize here a little bit, but Harrison Jones doesn't look like it's going to get any value this game. His threats are relatively slow, I would say, in comparison to the ones that Muzzy is throwing at him. Plus, Muzzy has the option to draw 2 cards a turn.
Yeah, Muzzy can draw 2 cards a turn. He just picked up a Malagos as well. It's another huge threat, and you have to believe it's not going to be easily checked by ErA's deck here if he wants, but he might be thinking of a Implosion Blackwing Corruptor turn here as well. He's got a ton of options here. He has almost full hand here.
Yeah, a lot of different ways to go with this turn. None of them look bad either to me. Whether it's developing 2 Twilight Drakes, whether it's making sure you get value out of the Blackwing Corruptor, everything's sort of in Muzzy's court at this point. Yeah. And ErA's starting to run out of gas.
Yeah, even Emperor seems pretty good in some ways too. Just make this giant hand of yours more castable over the next couple turns because it's very. He gets the full 4 imps off of the Implosion there. You can see ErA is not happy the way this game is working out.
Yeah, no answer to what's going on. He can Cruel Taskmaster and use Big Game Hunter on this Corruptor if he wants to, but I have to believe he wants to just get threats on the board and hope that he can start trying to get some value out of them. But just once again, with the way that Muzzy's hand is constructed, I'm not sure this is going to get done.
Yeah, he's going to add a lot of tension to the board here, but Muzzy has some very easy ways of finishing all this off. He has a ton of damage in his hand. He has a Malagos and a Soulfire. He even picks up a Hellfire here, which is going to help him into this game very quickly if he wants to.
Yeah, he's got 17 damage with Malagos and Soulfire right now. So very close to getting this game over with. This looks to me like it's got to be some sort of building board tension turn. To me, it looks like Twilight Drake and Emperor is a fantastic play. Not only do you get more threats on the board after you've seen a Brawl from your opponent, but it's just, how do they deal with all this stuff that's coming out? If you 1-for-1 on cards your opponent at this point, there's almost no way that you could lose the game.
Yeah, there's almost no way you could lose the game. Now you're gonna see Muzzy just clean up a little bit here, take care of this minion, because honestly, I don't think that 2 damage is gonna matter in the grand scheme of things if ErA doesn't have another card like Brawl.
Yeah, exactly. It accomplishes 2 things. Number 1, it keeps ErA from having a lot of options, and then number 2, it does hedge his bets against Brawl a little bit here. So ErA going to try to get done exactly what he can. Sludge Belcher, Armor Smith is a great way to pad that life total, but I don't think life total is the big story here right now. I think it's card advantage.
Yeah, you're just seeing a ton of card advantage by Muzzy here, just drawing extra cards every turn, leveraging his life total as a resource, and this Emperor is adding a ton of mana to his hand too as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the few ways that you want to be able to leverage your life totals in matchups where your opponent is not applying a lot of pressure to that. You know, you're free to take blowback however you see fit, and make sure that you have all these extra options. I mean, we talk about how we thought this was going to be a battle of the traditional aggressor versus the control style, but Muzzy has completely changed up his game plan and is going towards more of the power kinds of strategies that you're going to see. And I think this is one of the biggest ones right now. Is Ironbeak Owl going to be enough? He's got 5 damage with the Soulfire. He's got 5 damage with Emperor Thor's on 14. He's got 15 points of damage available to him with Ironbeak Owl on the Sludge Belcher. So not quite enough here.
Short, yeah.
But once again, there's no shortage of options from him. He's free to clear everything pretty much how he sees fit at this point.
Yeah, Muzzy firing on all cylinders here. He's going to take care of this Armor Smith, and I really expect to see him. I thought he would push for a lot of damage here this turn, because I feel like the only way he can lose this game is a really bad brawl from ErA.
Yeah, the fact that he might only be able to lose this game from a really bad brawl is, there's 2 different ways to approach that. The first one, of course, is damage, and the second one is just by choking your opponent out of the game. Since he's got this kind of lead, it's really easy for him to just follow through on that scenario and make sure he keeps that big control over the board.
Yeah, we saw this in an earlier match of Muzzy. He got out pretty far ahead of the Control Warrior and then ended up letting it slip. He got really defensive in like the mid to late game and didn't finish off his opponent. Not saying it was a mistake, but maybe just like a little bit of an oversight where he could have been more aggressive and tried to end the game sooner. But it's a little different situation now when you have 8 or 9 extra cards in your hand every game and you're winning on board. It's really hard to think it's wrong to control the board and start to push from there.
Yeah, still not enough damage to push for lethal this turn, and he's got to cast Malagos and all the things that go with it. So missing a couple. I think he's missing a couple points anyway. I mean, Soulfire could be 10 damage this turn, and Hellfire would be 8 damage. I'm sorry, 9 damage this turn because of the Azure Drake. So 10 plus. I mean, maybe that is enough actually. You could just send in the Twilight Drake to this, run in the Imp, and then use the Ironbeak Owl to clear up the 1/2. Actually, I think that is lethal.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be just enough here. Malagos is going to do a lot of work here. 7 mana Malagos is pretty scary.
Yeah, Thorson really has unlocked his potential. Yeah, this is more than enough damage at this point. It was a matter of how he chose to chew through this Sludge Belcher right at the beginning, and that's, unless he discards the Hellfire, okay, that would be the only situation where ErA was able to live. So Azure Drake actually pulling its weight there too and making sure it's getting in that extra 2 points of damage. As far as the spell damage is concerned, Muzzy up 2 games to 0 now here over ErA. I mean, finding the right sequences at the end, he had was it exact lethal he had on that very last turn, and a lot of that comes from the fact that he's able to leverage that Warlock hero power in that sort of matchup. I mean, you look at the way that control game panned out, that is like the stuff that dreams are made of when you're a control player, is that your opponent plays a similar style strategy to you, but you're the one with the Warlock hero power. You can leverage your life total to pick up extra options rather than deal with the threats that your opponent is throwing at you. That's how Warrior wants to work, is kind of use those weapons to create a tempo effect so that when you scale into your mid game, you have the first step of initiative every single part of the way. Not the case in this game. Muzzy just absolutely crushing him with availability of options. Trading life for options is a very good thing in matchups where your opponent does not pressure your life total.
Yeah, Muzzy had to be excited and super ecstatic to see that he was playing a control mirror there, because his deck was very suited for it. And as you said, it got to leverage his life total every turn, getting him extra cards. And I think you saw him in the game with an extra 8 cards in his hand or something like that. So there was not a lot of ways that ErA could have gotten out of this match. And that matchup seems really, really terrible for the Control Warrior.
Yeah, it seemed extremely rough. We even saw him get a brawl off at some point. Didn't get the brawl that he wanted. It seems to be that brawls are not panning out the way that he wants them to so far here in HPL. But again, just being able to crush the control game in terms of the number of options in your hand, really big point there for Muzzy. And so we've seen him now, he's really swapped away from the aggressive strategies. Maybe feels like that those are the ones that are getting targeted here in HPL, going more towards powerful strategies that are trying to do more powerful things and not really leave the onus to your opponent to answer everything that you're throwing at them. And that has worked out fantastically for him in this match.
Yeah, it's working out fantastically for Muzzy, guys. Get out there on Twitter, use that hashtag HPL. Let us know what you think is going to happen in this match. Does ErA have the reverse sweep in him? Is Muzzy going to finish off the sweep? What's going to happen? What are they going to play? We're going to find out when we come back in Game 3, Muzzy versus ErA. You're watching Hearthstone on PvP Live.